Hi, my name is Layla Shakir, and I'm going to be presenting to you the parental rights and special education process, and I'm going to start now. So the first thing is the IEP contract, and if a child has a disability, the school district must write an IEP for him or her, which includes its offer of FAPE, which is a free appropriate education. This offer of FAPE is a binding contract for services between the school district and the parent. So basically, this contract is just to confirm with the school district and the parent that they're able to do a individual education plan for their child and they're able to start the process. The next slide is a free and appropriate public education, which I mentioned in the first slide. And a free appropriate public education is the educational right of all students in the United States that is guaranteed by the Rehabilitation Act of 1973 and the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. Free and appropriate means that every student is entitled to an education that is based upon the child's unique needs. It basically means that under no circumstance should a parent be asked to pay for any or of all of it. So before the FAPE Act, children who had special needs were placed into schools that didn't have the necessary resources for them, and parents were asked to pay out of pocket. So with this law, children are able to go to public schools and get these resources without parents having to pay. The next slide is the least restrictive environment. So this goes along with the free appropriate education. Children with disabilities are placed in the least restrictive environment due to whatever unique disability that they have. So they're placed in this environment, this specific environment, depending on them due to what they need. So in the slide it says, in the U.S., the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act is a special education law that mandates regulation for students with disabilities to protect their rights as students and the rights of their parents. This means that the district must show that it has attempted to provide services to the student in a classroom setting that is as close to a general education setting as possible. So as we have discussed in this class and different discussion posts that we've talked about, and placing students with disabilities in the appropriate environment in order for them to get the best services that they need for their individual needs. So during the IEP process and at the end of it, they are placed in the least restrictive environment for them to get what they need for them. The next slide is laws regarding the evaluation and assessment. So this connects back to the IEP process, and this discusses the parents' rights and what they have during the time of the process. So the first thing is timeline. It says students need to be evaluated before receiving special education services. In some states, you must be presented with an assessment plan within 15 days of your request. However, the evaluation must be completed with 60 days in all states. Holidays aren't included. The next thing that's discussed in this slide is the informed consent, which we talked about before, was the contract being signed and just the consent of being able to do different assessments and evaluations on your kids. Without these things being done and without the consent of the parent, you cannot do these assessments on the children. Next is a native language. It says it is illegal to identify students as disabled unless they have been tested in their native language. So what this ending part means is if you have a child that is Spanish speaking and you give them a test to evaluate them but it's in English, that's illegal. How can you say a child is special education if you are not giving them the test in their native language? So all these things that were discussed is a timeline, so 60 days within the time that the evaluation process goes, and that's the max amount of time that you have until you have to kind of get like a verdict on whether your child is going to be placed under special education or not. The informed consent, so that means there has to be some type of consent between the school and the parent in order for the process to go through. And lastly, the native language. If the child is not given the proper test in their language, and it's illegal to do so, and you have to give them the proper resources to be able to assess them properly. Next is laws regarding disputes and behavioral challenges. So this is after it's all said and done. If you feel like your child wasn't necessarily placed in the the appropriate place that they needed to be, or even if they didn't, if they say your child is not under special education and you feel like this is wrong, you can dispute it. And it says special education law allows parents or districts to ask for any of the three dispute resolution process if the student does not receive any services because the state may feel they are not qualified under special education. The final process is a due process hearing, in which is a very like a trial in a case. So basically, if you feel like the state didn't do your child like how you felt like was needed, then you can take it to court. You can, argue your side and they'll argue their side, and then you kind of come to an agreement. And lastly is stay put, which is referred to, it's a law under the IEP. So this is just for say your child wasn't classified at the time you wanted them to be. You keep your child where they are, which is the stay put law. You keep them where they are, and they still continue to get the services that they need even after the IEP is processed, and maybe you didn't get the results that you wanted. And that's it, guys. So that's the laws on the parents and during the IEP process and different things that they can get out of it, as well as the school side. And that's it. Thank you.